So, good afternoon, everybody. I want to review AEW Dynamite for February 25, and it's actually like 2 months after Christmas, but honestly, this felt like a Christmas gift. This was a very, very strong show, and I do want to make a couple of quick announcements. That, first of all, um, I'm a fan of Wrestle Toddy and a few other YouTube channels, and one thing that she was talking about is going to the G1. Um, since it's in Chicago, it's not that far from anywhere to fly to Chicago who can afford it. This weekend, I'm going to the NJPW New Beginning show in Trenton, New Jersey. And then also, Combat Zone Wrestling has two events. They have Backlight on Saturday night, and then also they have their anniversary show on Sunday. So I will be doing videos on all that stuff because obviously I think one of the things I learned from Wrestle Toddy is that one good thing about being a fan of professional wrestling is to honestly see everything that you can really. Um, if it works out with my finances, I would love to go to AEW in Wembley Stadium, but I believe they'll have Rev Pro Wrestling and other events. Just like with WrestleMania, that Vegas there's a bunch of shows and a bunch of wrestling events there really. So you should check out different stuff really. Interestingly enough, I live in Connecticut. GCW has a show in Hartford this weekend, but obviously I'm not going to go back Hartford to Trenton. That's way too long. Um, but overall with the show, I felt that it had a lot more strengths and weaknesses. A few things that I like about AW is I like singles matches. I don't like way too many tag team or multi person matches because, like I said, it's a little hard to follow when there's too much shit like that. The next thing that I will say is that I feel like they've been cutting down on hardcore matches, and I appreciate that. Like you can't do that every single week. And I think that's very, very appropriate. And I also appreciate that with the Mile High match, there was a build to it. Like the Rascals and the Young Bucks and the Demand and FTR, they all been who's on whose side, why they're feuding with the other team really. And then also they had opening promos tonight to really say, okay, this is why the Young Bucks are pissed with FTR really. I mean, this is why the Bucks are pissed with the Demand, and that's important because it's context, and that's what they need is context, and that's what WWE does a lot is context, context, context. Another thing that I really liked about this show is that Tony Storm was not on it, and this is good because I love Tony Storm. She's a great wrestler. She's definitely one of the MVPs. But you can't always have the same people on every single show. You need to give people a break sometimes. Like with Mercedes, like it's great that she's not on television for a while because you need to say, hey, um, we need to kind of just like let you disappear for a while because otherwise it becomes too monotonous. Um, so I'm gonna go over the entire show. First of all, one thing I'm going to start doing is talking about the biggest things really. So I want to start with the Mile High Madness match. It was really just Denver Anarchy in the arena. Like the crowd was really into this, and I really think they need to do a Ring of Honor pay per view in Denver this year. I'm going to actually mention that to Tony Khan. Um, it would be a little hard to do a pay per view there, like for AEW, because you got to get like maybe 8,000 or more people. I'm not sure if you're gonna get that in Denver. I'm not sure how big the population is, but definitely, I do think they deserve at least one ROH pay per view, and just to see how that sells, because they were really, really fucking wild during this match. So, Mile High Madness, FTR and the Demand versus the Young Bucks, the Rascals, and Jack Perry. And then I was talking to I Am Zayn, and he was not happy with this match. He's a YouTuber, but he said like some of this should be saved for a pay per view. But sometimes it's okay to have like maybe one pay per view caliber match a show. There's obviously stuff that shouldn't be like on television, like Osprey versus Ricochet one shouldn't have been on television. But I feel like this was okay really because obviously the Young Bucks are this is really just like a Young Bucks type of match. And then also you have a Texas Death Match as the main event of AEW Revolution. So I don't mind AEW Revolution not having a other hardcore match. If you do too many hardcore matches on one show, you turn it into Combat Zone Wrestling, really. So I'm okay with this not being on Revolution. The other thing was that one bad thing about the match was that it was very dark. So they need to start having spotlights or they need to start like saying, okay, we're going to turn on all the lights. We're going to try to like adjust something really, because I think one of the big problems is that when they fight in the crowd, there's a lot of like there's like too much shadow in it. So I really think they need to have spotlights, even just to kind of see how that's going to go, really. There were some really cool spots, like Myron Reeves jumps over the top rope and gives Toyota a cutter. And I also like Jack Power using like the vacuum cleaner. It was actually funny. Got the announcers like coughing, and then also the other thing too was that the Rascals and Ricochet does a Spanish fly through a table, and I think with the Rascals, because their style it really is like weed and drugs and other things like that. I think they're gonna. I think they do better as a trios team. I think they do better also, in my opinion, as as like a no DQ type of team. I think like whenever they want to do like you want to have a tornado tag or whatever. I think they're very very strong with that. Like again, I really think that. In the next couple of months, they really need to be a trios team, or even do that at Wembley Stadium. Like I think they need to be a trios team this year. I think they're booked very strongly. I think they need strong momentum. I think that with Collision, especially, push the Rascals in a very very strong direction, because really, obviously drugs and other things like that. That's still very controversial. That's still very edgy. So that works for AEW because it's TV-14. It's not TVPG. So I really think they need a consistently strong booking. Like I said, it's not about the first 6 weeks. It's the first 6 months. It's about like, maybe a year or more or whatever really. But I really think that the Rascals at Wembley Stadium should become the trios tag team. I really think that that needs to happen. If they don't do that, then that's a very missed opportunity. Handy dandy notebook. The other match that I really enjoyed tonight, and it was Brody King versus Mark Davis. There were a couple of things about this match. That first of all, there was the fuck ice chance, and then it lasted for like maybe like 10, 20 seconds. And then it kind of shows to everybody, and I think a lot of people have been criticizing AEW for this, that Brody King's not getting over because of fuck ice. He's getting over because he's a great performer. And I actually think it's also because he's very believable. And I also think a lot of people are saying, you know what, when you look at why Hobbs left AEW, it's because they don't push big men that well. And I think that with Brody King, he's almost at the right place in the right time. He's been with AEW for a long time. He and Bandito are wrestling as single star. They're friends, but they're wrestling as single stars. So they're doing the right transitions with these people. And they're also graduating them, because obviously you can't just keep two people in a tag team for a very long time. Imagine if Martin Jannetty and Shawn Michaels were in a tag team for a long time. Or I think it was like the Fabulous Blondes. I think it was Stone Cold Steve Austin and somebody. But there's certain points when there are certain people on your roster that cannot be tag team wrestlers. Like look at Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy. There's a certain point where you have to say we have to make you single stars, or Edge and Christian, because otherwise you have somebody that can be a heavyweight wrestler, be a draw for pay-per-views, and then they're like stuck really. But this match says that hey, it's not just because of fuck guys, it's because Brody King's a bad motherfucker really. There's a lot of fuck him up Brody, fuck him up chance, fuck Don Callis, fuck Ice 2 chance. Brody King does a Death Valley driver. Brody King does a second rope dive. Superseda. Brody King does a cannonball. Brody King wins with a lariat. And I kind of said he needs to probably use a more epic finisher, like a pile driver, or even like that. I forgot what that's called, but like that crucifix power bomb that he uses, or whatever, really. But honestly, he needs to, like, if he needs to hit Mark Davis with a bigger move, a lariat, it's just not that epic, really. I can understand, obviously doing a power bomb or a more dangerous type of move on a bigger guy is more dangerous, because obviously they're, they have to like know how to maneuver their body real bit. I felt like, he needs to kind of have a finisher. He should have like hit him with another finisher that would have been more effective than a lariat. The other part of it is that they're setting up Brody King and Swerve Strickland for AEW Revolution. I really want to see that, because obviously they never faced each other before, I believe. I think another good thing that I want to say, two things, is that I like the Continental Classic, because sometimes you get matchups and then sometimes you see how a wrestler works with different wrestlers. And I think it kind of inspires people to say, hey, you know what? What if you put this wrestler, that wrestler in the Continental Classic, how would they kind of that kind of almost prepares them to be a heavyweight champion, because that's what heavyweight champions should be, is people who wrestle different people. And sometimes you have to start wrestling people you never faced before, or people in the heavyweight division, or people in the who may become heavyweight champions, you know. So I really think that this is a great match for Brody King. I think this is a good match for him. It's gonna, because I think for Brody King this year, he could be the AEW champion at World's End. Or maybe they can do something with Brody King where he goes through the year facing former AEW world champions at pay-per-views. And I think that's the way to go, really, because that's going to elevate him. You can even do Chris Jericho versus Brody King um, at Dynasty or something like that. But you need to kind of keep building Brody King, saying, hey, this is not just and I really think he needs to beat Swerve, but this is a great match because Swerve needs to win, Brody King needs to win. So it's going to be really interesting to see, you know, what they choose. And then they also set up Bandito versus Andrade. Like, Bandito and Andrade have great matches. So it's really great usage. And then also with Bandito, I'm going to get to my next page, but also with Bandito, but no, with Andrade, what I have to say about Andrade is that it's good that he's back in AEW, because it's going to show people, okay, well, he went to AEW, it didn't work out. He went to WWE, it didn't work out. Now they're trying to fix Andrade, really. So obviously, it's always a good look when you're saying, hey, you know what, we made some mistakes, we'll try to fix it. Or, hey, yeah, people from TNA Wrestling, like the Rascals, hey, you know what, maybe this is a better environment for them. And because it's a better environment for them, we're going to show what we can do, really, like build everybody strongly. And that's kind of what happened in the Attitude Era, is that everybody was built strongly. There was a standard for everybody. And if you do that consistently, you're going to have great stuff, really. It's hard as fuck, really, but you have to do that. And then the other thing that happened tonight was there was the Mega Bad versus the Babes of Wrath. There's also like maybe like another match. It's kind of ironic. The last three matches I really enjoyed. So Mega Bad versus the Babes of Wrath. A lot of people were really cheering for Willow, and Willow and Megan Bayne kind of has like that big woman versus big woman type of feel to it. So I really think that at one point Megan Bayne should become the TBS champion, or you should do Willow versus Megan Bayne. Like, I really think that needs to happen. I also think within this year or next year, Willow needs to be the AEW Women's Champion, or she needs to go to NXT, because I really think there's the potential. But I really think that they need to say within the next 2 years she has to be the AEW Women's Champion. I mean, then also everything too is that she becomes the first trio. She becomes the first trios AEW Women's AEW the first trios women's champion. She'll be the Triple Crown, the first women's Triple Crown, and she becomes the AEW Women's Champion, because she'll have the tag team, TBS, and Women's Championship. The next thing is that unfortunately Penelope Ford got hurt. She did top rope moonsault, which looks really cool, but she did get hurt during this match. And they did something where I think her name was like Rita something. Rita Cross. She attacks Willow. And that kind of ends the match because they had to kind of improvise. But the thing about it is this, that Penelope Ford's got injured multiple times. The other problem with Penelope Ford is she's a smaller girl. So I don't think she works well with Megan Bayne, because it kind of reminds me of when you watch a lot of like Looney Tunes and other like cartoons where you see this really small person and this really big person. Or like in Ed, Ed, and Eddie, you have the dumb Ed who's big and strong, and then you have the other Eds who are not as big, really. So I think that Penelope Ford should just be, Megan Bayne should just turn heel. I mean, she's already heel, but like a further heel, beat down Penelope Ford, retire Penelope Ford, have her sit at home, get her out of the company, or put her on Ring of Honor. I don't think that she's good. For Megan Bayne, and then have Megan Bayne and Marina Shafir, or Megan Bayne and Rita Cross. And the reason why you do that is because it looks too good, these two big women actually having really great matches in AEW, really. I think that Penelope Ford is a weak link. And I hate even saying this, Eddie Kingston's a great mic person. I think Eddie Kingston should become a ring announcer or something like that, really, or even like a general manager. But I think Eddie Kingston also needs to go as well, really, because he has great matches, but he just got hurt. He's been out for almost like 1.5 years, and now he's injured again, really. So I really think that there's some wrestlers that really need to call it quits. If you get injured too much, then it's just that it's something where you have to get where they have to say we gotta nix you. There was the Hangman and Adam Page. There was the Hangman MJF segment. I really I had some mixed feelings about this. A couple of things is that I feel like MJF's a little flanderized. He acts like an asshole. But the problem is, I think he does that a little too much. I think he has to kind of cut back on it because he does that every single time. He becomes like Eric Cartman, or he becomes a little flanderized, and I feel like MJF has become flanderized because he tries to overdo it every single time. The other thing is that they had their talks really, and there was nothing really memorable to it outside of what happened. Whereas they decided that there's two stipulations. It's either no DQ for MJF or Texas Death Match. So what happened was MJF flipped a coin, and it was revealed that was a double-headed coin. And then Tony Khan makes an announcement that says because MJF used a double-headed coin, it's going to be a Texas Death Match. And then also on top of it is that when MJF used the double-headed coin, he went to the back area, and then what happened was that he got chased out by Speedball Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight and Brody King, and I think it was also Bandito and another person as well. But I felt that was two 48-hour film project. And what I mean by that is that when you do the 40-hour film project, a lot of the movies are just silly comedies, or people in love with dumb comedy, really. So I felt that there's another like kind of dumb comedy thing, really. And I think that shouldn't have not been real. I think what they should have did was, if I was booking it, I'd say, okay, you can do this angle, but make it a dog collar match, because a lot of people will be like, okay, well, I think it's going to happen because that seems realistic, or it's going to be a 1 hour match or something like that. I think that if you had those stipulations and MJ picked one, advocated for those, that's what he wanted, then you have Hangman Page saying Texas Death Match. You do the coin toss and you reveal that's going to be a dog collar match or a 1 hour match. And then you later on say, okay, we're going to make it a Texas Death Match because MJF used a double-sided coin. I think with all of that would have been a better usage, really. Because I think once he said it's going to be no DQ for MJF, and then he talks a little hyperbole about how it's going to be fair for him, MJF. I just said, okay, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, really. But, and then they added like this very hammy type of ending to it, and I felt that was too much of a joke. I also, and as I said, when MJF took his gum and he threw it into the audience and said I got thrown in the trash, really, again, it's like what I said about it's good that he does it, but he might have to be a little bit more rare with it, because if he does it every single time, it feels very flanderized. But overall, it was a good segment and moved things forward. And I also want to say that I want to give AEW a lot of credit, because one of the biggest problems I've had with AEW is two things. That I feel like to their pay-per-views, they kind of stack the card at the very end. And I think there's two problems with this. You have to build towards matches, and they're doing that very well. You kind of can foreshadow what's going to happen with AEW, with their matches, with what matches are going to happen at their pay-per-views. I appreciate that. I also appreciate that I think that another thing they're trying to do is saying that, okay, every single week with Dynamite and Collision, we have to progress matches or things towards a match for a pay-per-view. Not just, oh, well, we're going to announce 6 or 7 matches for the show the day before or whatever, or it's going to come out of nowhere, really. Like, I like this kind of build towards it, and that's what WWE does, but I think that AEW is working on this weakness. Like the thing with TNA Wrestling that's great about TNA Wrestling is, in my opinion, they do a lot of they focus more on storytelling in TNA Wrestling. They focus more on building shit towards pay-per-views, and that's what you need to do, because you can't make shit come out of nowhere. You have to build towards your matches. And I appreciate that. And that's been a huge weakness of AEW. They're working on that. And then if you think about it, I think it was 2 weeks ago that they were in Australia. So it says something that, for 4 weeks, the next 4 weeks for a period of 4 weeks from Valentine's Day in Australia all the way to St. Patrick's Day week in Los Angeles Revolution, that between those shows, they're building matches appropriately. They're giving it the right pacing. They're not just like saying, okay, it's coming out of nowhere, really. Like, I appreciate that they're working harder on pacing. They're really working harder on saying, okay, this show needs to. It's like a chapter book. This show, last week's show, MJF and Hangman were talking. This week, MJF talked about the stipulation he wants. The stipulation's decided. Next week they might have a talk, or there might be another talk in the following week, and then you lead to that. So I really appreciate all that stuff happening. The next thing that I want to say is that the next match on the card was Orange Cassidy versus Gabe Kidd. I wasn't really a fan of like the first two matches. I felt they're a little repetitive. And then also, I think with Orange Cassidy and El Colon, they're both very flippy wrestlers. And I didn't see that a lot of them had that high octane stuff. And I understand because Gabe Kidd and Moxley are more like brawlers. They're not more the high octane, let's move quickly type of wrestlers. So they almost had to like nerf their style a little bit. Um, Orange Cassidy versus Gabe Kidd was hard hitting match. Um, I would also say that I like Gabe Kidd. He's very intense. He has a very he looks like a killer. Really, he looks like someone you don't want to fuck with. And then the other thing about it is that I think Clark Connors and Gabe Kidd, they both need to go after the AEW Tag Team Championships, or ROH Tag Team Championship at a certain point. I think they have a good chemistry. I like the intensity. I like the segments they did with taking Darby out onto the desert. Like, they're unapologetic. They're ruthless. They're just very, very violent people. So I really think, in a sense, I really, really think that that they have some futures in AEW. They really have to keep pushing them. There's also one big problem with Gabe Kidd. Like, if I remember correctly, he was with the Don Callis family at a certain point. Or I think he helped them out at a certain point, but now he's with the Death Riders, and the Death Riders is also feuding with the Don Callis family, so it feels a little contradictory. But they kind of moved um, Gabe Kidd and Clark Connors to be feuding with the conglomeration and Darby Allin, who was fighting against John Moxley at a certain point. So I think they've kind of been a little sloppy with that, or there's some plot hole. But a lot of people probably don't remember that Gabe Kidd and Don Callis family, I think they were there together at one point. But it does feel a little sloppy if you kind of remember all that. But I think they're also trying to set up Darby Allin and Orange Cassidy versus Gabe Kidd and Clark Connors. I'm okay with that. It's also good because I don't feel that's going to be like a hardcore match. Because like I said, you have the Texas Death Match at the end of Revolution. You have to show some restraint. It's maybe two maximum, but show some restraint. You can't have two like anarchy or crazy matches on a show because it gets a little repetitive, really. Tekla and Thunder Rosa, next week they're wrestling for the AEW Women's Championship. A lot of people were a little bothered by this because they said that's a little too early. I understand that sometimes they want to have matches like this on television. The reason is because Thunder Rosa is from El Paso, I believe, or she's from like the Texas area. She's from the Texas area. I believe El Paso, if I'm correct. But the point of it is that she's just there. That's happening because obviously they want to just do something for the audience. Oh, well, this is the hometown girls going to her city. Really, she's having a match. Really, so I think that's why. No problem with that. There's Kevin Knight versus Mansoor. I didn't really care about this match because it was a jobber match. The other thing about it is it's kind of bad because I think the Maximum Male Models, they were very very, very over when they came to AEW. I think they had a lot of appeal. It was a little different to see like these Lady Gaga inspired people, but it's kind of really sad because again, they disappeared for a very long time, and it's also bad because I think they said the other guy Mansoor is okay, but the other guy that he's with is hurt. But it's almost like, why can't you do Mansoor and John Morrison? Why can't you do Mansoor, John Morrison, um, Taya Valkyrie and Deanna Purrazzo? Like, Taya Valkyrie and Deanna Purrazzo are actually going after the women's tag team titles. Like, that would be a good match. That would be a good match. Like these like the MXM, they have like women in their faction, Ty Valkyrie and Gian Peraza, and they're going after the AEW women's tag teams. Because I like what I'm Zayn was saying. Like, there's a lot of women at home. In AEW, they need to kind of build their divisions a lot more. They have the titles, but they don't really have a very competitive. They don't really have a lot of people in those divisions. But they need to start kind of, as I said, use Collision a little bit more to bring some people that have been sitting home for a while. Some people that have potential. Like John Morrison should be wrestling, Ricochet for the national championship at one point, but um, there's too many people. I think there's just they have a lot of really great people. They have a lot of really great talents sitting at home. Really, like I said, it's almost like a refrigerator. Like it's almost like running a kitchen. Really, it's almost like running a Vegas buffet. There's a lot of great dishes that you see now, but there's a lot of dishes in the refrigerator. You got to kind of bring everything out. Really. The other thing I want to mention is El Colon versus Mox. I didn't really care about this match. I felt like El Colon was limited because he wasn't doing flips or a lot of stuff. He did some of it, but he didn't as much as he could, really. I don't like El Colon losing because didn't Hologram have an undefeated streak? So if you want to do El Colon versus Hologram, you would have to do something where El Colon's undefeated, but they took that away from him because they keep putting him in matches with people who have who have championships. The next thing was that the other big part of the show was a Swerve promo. He comes down with no music. I appreciate that because obviously he's a heel now. Doesn't make sense. So I appreciate that type of thought. Because also AEW, sometimes they put out stuff and I don't think they give it that much thought, really. So sometimes I think about, okay, Swerve's coming down. Should we have Nana dancing or should we not have Nana dancing? How would a character react, really? And I think that they're doing a lot more thought on that. And I like what he said. He said, I feel no guilt about what he did, but he felt mad that Kenny Omega called Brody King the most dangerous man in AEW. So automatically they did the F word. They did foreshadowing. They did foreshadowing with Kenny Omega and Swerve. Now they're talking about Brody King again. Brody King has a promo after this Swerve promo. So you're using foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is very good in storytelling because it creates continuity. And then also he mentioned that beating Kenny Omega puts me in the run for the AEW Championship. I appreciate that. That's continuity. It also says that's his motivation. Wins matter to him. Being ruthless, going after those wins that matter. He says, I regret all the ruthless things that I did to gain the AEW Championship at All In, but now I live with no regrets. I'll be the most dangerous man in AEW. So ultimately, I think that he's a little bit more desperate to get the AEW championship. He feels like he needs to be more ruthless. He feels like, this really matters to him. And I think that he feels like his place is like to be the head of the table, to quote Roman Reigns, really. So, by any means, like Malcolm X, as Malcolm X famously said, by any means necessary, or as 50 Cent famously said, get rich or die trying. Like, sometimes you got to be ruthless to get to the top, really. And I think maybe that's what Swerve is saying. Or you can say something like, hey, Max, when I saw Max become champion, Max became champion because he's more ruthless than a lot of people. And I felt like I've gotten soft. He probably could have used that a little bit more. He probably could have said it like that, really. But that was good. And then also the other thing, too, is that Brody King backstage. Brody King had a promo after this, and he kind of was talking about a match with Swerve. And then they're going to have a match of Revolution. Absolutely, that needs to happen because, like I said, you need to build Brody King up. You need to say to your audience, okay, you don't have big men like Brody King in the tag team division forever. Or, hey, well, Brody King's really over. It's very over. People like him. Fuck Ice. Everything's over. So what do you do with someone like that? Do you utilize them, or do they just sit the fuck at home like Ricky Starks, or do you actually try to say, hey, this is over, and we have to really develop this person, So I really think there was a lot of steps in the right direction for AEW for this week.